Welcome everybody to the 4th press conference at the International Media Center FCMC. Today is Friday, July 7, 2017. Regarding procedure, we're going to have half an hour, 45 minutes of statements by the spokespeople on the stadium. Then you're free to ask questions in plenum to the podium. Afterwards, you are also welcome to request one-on-one interviews. Please come up to the podium and request. The Media Center FCMC provides a platform for independent perspectives of the G20 summit. We're here until Sunday, every day. Local and international guests who express their perspectives to the G20 summit. We, as the FCMC, offer the platform and the framework for these wide-ranging perspectives, and that does not mean, I wish to state this expressly on behalf of FCMC, that we do not necessarily associate ourselves with the views expressed here. Our aim is to allow as many voices as possible to be heard, and therefore we are broadcasting this press conference to as many broadcasters as possible. I wish to welcome Timon Simons from the social strike protest in the port of Hamburg. Yana Schneider is from Block G20, which will start today, or has already started today. Andreas Boyd from the report on the incidents of the demonstration Welcome to Hell. Gabriele Heinecke, who's also from the Emergency Legal Aid. And Yavuz Fersoglu from the Demo Alliance Solidarity Without Borders, who will give us an outlook for the universal demonstration tomorrow, July 8. Welcome to all our spokespeople. Our opening speaker, I'd like to welcome Timon Simons from the social strike protest in the port of Hamburg. Hello everybody, thank you for coming today. I want to briefly explain to you what we did yesterday, what we've been doing up until today and what happened. Social strike protest is a pan-European alliance from left-wing trade unions and autonomous left-wing movements who wish to demonstrate against capitalism, and this is why we chose to demonstrate in the port of Hamburg. Unlike the other activities in the center of Hamburg, our protest was not against the politicians visiting the G20. We're not competing with the other protests. And together, we wish to complement other protests in the city. As rather unappealing as Donald Trump might seem to be, and as much as we wish the fall of Erdogan and Putin, they are in fact dispensable faces in the capitalist system. And we don't expect to win the political arena for us, to win it over onto our side. What we want to do is the way to achieve radical change is to create pressure against the capital system. We wish to abolish capitalism. So that's why where we want to go today and yesterday, where it will really hit capitalism hard, namely the port of Hamburg, everything that we wish to criticize, poverty, isolationism, and hunger, exploitation, it's all in the port. And exploitative incidents. The exploitative wage dumping in the port, refugees drowning in the Mediterranean, and people who, despite finding a full-time job, are falling into poverty. This is the result of the capitalist society, and we are the means to fulfilling the needs of the capitalist system. The Port of Hamburg is also a logistical bottleneck, and important is just-in-time production. Formerly, things were produced in factories, and nowadays, goods are permanently in transit. Logistics is a main artery of the capitalist system, and this is why we want to demonstrate in the port. We entered the port with as many people as possible. Our opponents were not the police. We wanted to block with as many people as we possibly could. We had registered 2 demonstrations, one in Wilhelmsburg and one in Veddel in South Hamburg, and we believed that our protest would be successful, that in spite of our identity as radical left-wing movement, that we would be able to appeal reasonably to the political sphere. And our aim is to achieve a radical left-wing pan-European movement. I'd like to explain to you very briefly what has happened. We believe that we were very successful. We managed to enter the port of Hamburg with more than 1,000 people. We believe that we surprised the police. They tried to stop us in Stellingen, that's another neighborhood to the north of Hamburg. But we got as far as the important bridge for goods traffic over the River Elbe in the port of Hamburg. As a result, so we were able to disrupt operations in a large part of the harbor. We got a lot of support from truck drivers and also port workers who were waving at us and who seemed to be very pleased with what we were doing. Currently, the atmosphere has been very, very cheerful and full of solidarity with other protesters, in the center of Hamburg. We've now finished our protest, and we believe that we've created a symbolic moment. And now we're going back with more than 1,000 people trying to come into the center of Hamburg and to continue our protest. Thank you very much, Timon Simons. Now I'd like to welcome Yana Schneider and a current update for Block G20. I've just come straight from the streets, together with several thousand people. Despite the incidents of the last few days, I got up and joined the other protesters at Millerntor. We succeeded in entering the so-called blue zone, and we took back our right to freedom of assembly. Many of us got quite close to the trade fair ground. Many of us conducted sit-ins on the street. Some of us managed to get onto the official route of the US delegation, and many of us were not far from there. Unfortunately, we have to establish that the police has acted against us in a very, very violent way. There was a large, extensive use of water cannon. Also an extensive use of pepper spray towards us in many places. We were pushed around. Inside the blue zone, it feels as if we don't have any human rights at all, as if our basic rights have been excluded, as if we're just animals that police wish to herd through the bush. In spite of all this, we kept together and we carried on carrying out our blockade. The people fall down but get up. And that has to do with what people have experienced in recent days. An enormous amount of solidarity in the sit-in and blockades, supported by the residents of Hamburg who have brought us coffee and things to eat. And that has something to do with that the people don't want this G20 summit here. The people are determined to keep on getting up, to continue and to conduct sit-ins on the street. And this is why we are here in Hamburg today. The police has once again escalated the situation in a very unnecessary way. Peaceful sit-ins were cleared. And thus, we did not experience the Festival of Democracy as we had planned. Instead, a zone where people are not allowed to express their basic rights. Block G20 will continue today. We are determined to join again together this afternoon and to protest against the madness of the G20 summit.
Vielen Dank, Jana Schneider, zur aktuellen Lage bei den Blockadeaktionen Block G20. Es geht weiter mit.
Thank you very much, Jana Schneider. Now I welcome Christoph Kleiner from the G20 platform. I'm speaking today for the G20 platform, an informal alliance of the different actors and organizations who have planned activities within the G20 summit. We don't directly call people to join in protests. We are a coordinating movement. We conduct observations, we exchange our observations, and we give estimations of situations. We met together today. We spoke about three things. We spoke of the course of events of the demonstration Welcome to Hell yesterday evening. We spoke about the blockade protests that will happen today in Hamburg. And we tried to estimate what will happen tomorrow at the universal demonstration, where all organizations, all social strata, all walks of political life will be meeting to protest. To the situation yesterday evening. We are really, really worried and we are horrified about the approach taken by the Hamburg police. Many of us are used to talking about police violence. What we saw, however, yesterday evening was absolutely inappropriate. And I must say that the Hamburg police didn't care whether people died, although that didn't happen. They risked people falling into the river. They used water can against people in high places who could have fallen down. There were people who were seriously injured. This was irresponsible and it was inappropriately violent. And it was a strategy that legitimates a state of emergency that was caused by the G20 summit, where the decisions have been allowed to be taken in this town that are irresponsible and which violate freedoms and basic rights in the name of Trump, Erdogan, and are subordinate to these world leaders. We are worried, we're horrified about everything that happened, and we urgently call to the Senate of Hamburg and the police president and to stop what they're doing, to reinstate democratic practices on the streets. And it's not justified for this meeting in G20 to sacrifice basic rights and democratic practices. Equally, we are impressed and very moved by the courage and from the determination of the activists who, in this situation and in spite of this situation, have continued to join together and do not give up their demands for basic rights and for the demand that the public space should belong to the people. Okay, with regard to tomorrow and the universal demonstration tomorrow, Yavuz will say something specifically about the demonstration. We have decided together across the broad spectrum of people that we stand together, we're going to walk together, and we're going to arrive together. The attempt by the police yesterday to break down a blockade, 10,000s of people tomorrow on the street are one single demonstration. We won't allow ourselves to be split up. Nobody will be left behind. And on that point, another thing, urgent call to people with political responsibility. Don't take the road of escalation and to allow people their democratic right of freedom of assembly. And an urgent call to all people who are maybe also worried, don't worry, go on the streets, leave your fear at home, come to Hamburg. There's something to do here, it's important. We need everybody. Thank you to Christoph Kleiner. Now I'd like to welcome Andreas Boyd with an evaluation of the incidents at the demonstration. Welcome to hell. Hello, everybody. I'm still under the impression that what happened last night, I haven't slept very much, and I've got a bit of pepper spray. Okay, in the face of brutality and cruelty, dialogue stops for us. What happened last night was absurd. The escalation was provoked by the police. The demonstration had joined up together between 12 and 15,000 people. Great demonstration with many great speeches, particularly by the Mexican visitors. A good atmosphere. And then it was suddenly people started talking about people with masked faces and that the demonstration couldn't continue. About 100 chains of one. We were told that there were masked people, and
Die Übersetzerin musste gerade einem Journalisten ausweichen. Deshalb vielleicht die letzten zwei Überlegungen nochmal.
Ja, Also wir hatten das umgesetzt, was die Polizei da gefordert hatte.
We implemented everything that the police had ordered us to do and thought that we could continue. And then the word was that there was still a block of masked people, of several hundred people. So then we thought, then the police seemed to think that they'd had enough and they were going to strike. A massive and incredibly brutal move by the police towards the people who seem to have come later on, and where the walls by the river Elbe were so high that the people couldn't get out of the way. Extremely hateful faces of the police who were hitting people even when they were on the ground. We don't have any exact information about arrests, and I know that there were 3 people who were serious, injured, and who are in a critical condition. Nobody died, but the police seemed to not care whether there were deaths or not. We thought that we'd lost everything and that was it, and then something incredible happened. 10,000 people were still standing behind the black block of masked faces. And after 2 hours of waiting, there was another new demonstration. And more and more people, residents of the neighborhood, started to join us. We were supported by other alliances, a very large bloc. Moved towards the demonstration. 2 demonstrations flowed into one. Residents were standing at the windows and putting music loudspeakers. Shit Hamburg, shit police, this is what they were calling. Incredible atmosphere. Then the actual demonstration went ahead, and we got as far as the Sternbrücke in the central zone. Then suddenly there was an escalation without any reason, and seemed to have our demonstration had nothing to do with autonomous. Yet the police went against with water cannon and truncheons. Overall, the line drawn between the rule of law to police brutality, but the people don't give up. We'll continue to fight, and the good thing is that everybody in this wide alliance, even the political party Die Linke, has offered us their support. They too see that the escalation came completely from the police. We will continue to fight together. Thank you very much.
I have to be able to see. Der nächste Beitrag kommt von Gabriele Heinecke vom Anwaltlichen Notdienst.
Gabriela Heinicke from the Emergency Legal Aid. We were sitting here before the demonstration and reminded people that the police is working with fake news. What does that mean? They are telling a narrative that there are 8,000 to 10,000 people with violent intentions, and the reality is that that's not the case at all. We have independent observers of the demonstration who have experienced at first hand that the police have been telling rubbish. I myself was at the demonstration. I was pushed around. It didn't interest the police that I was part of a legal team. So we're experiencing that the fakeness has been taken on by the police as a local authority. They maintain that the demonstrations are illegal. That means, as Andreas says, that the reason why they went against the demonstration was because of the masked people, and we know that that's not the case. The idea that there were thousands of masked people, that is a lie. And a city mustn't work with lies. And the coalition wanted to punish lies, and now they're using them themselves. The demonstration was absolutely peaceful. And even if you want to say that within the framework of the freedom of assembly, you're not allowed to mask your face, it is not allowed to attack a peaceful demonstration. The law states that you are permitted to demonstrate peacefully. The investigation committee have told us the number of victims that the police have told us. People from Bologna at the airport were not allowed to come into the city for the reasons of having the wrong dress. This is against the Declaration of Human Rights, and nobody should be prevented from going anywhere because they somehow look wrong. We have political prisoners. We have some people who've been 14 seriously injured people who were brought to hospital. One person was delivered to prison despite a fracture. We ourselves at the Emergency Legal Aid have extreme problems trying to talk to our clients. We have, on a list of names, so far only been able to speak to a fraction of the people. And people don't want to talk to us. That is what we've been told. Clients who said that he did want to, then we heard that it was because they didn't want to leave their cells. And then the police said that there was no question of lawyers going into the cell of prisoners. So this means that we are obstructed in our normal practices as legal experts. What are we seeing here is a civil war exercise and a riot confrontation, and this is a massive violation of constitutional rights. And the words from de Maizière, that in Hamburg we need to establish a state of emergency, is illegal and inappropriate in our view. We need freedom of opinion, we need freedom of assembly, and we don't need a police state.
Das war Gabriele Heinecke vom Anwaltlichen Notdienst. Ja.
I would like to say that the press releases from the investigation committee, which offer current information that are important for coverage of these events, you are welcome to take them with you when you leave. So, and our last speaker this morning, Yavuz Fersoglu, the Alliance Against G20, Solidarity Without Borders. What's happened this week showed us once again the brutality of the police, the restriction on basic freedoms by the Hamburg Senate, and in spite of this, more and more people are mobilizing, more and more people are joining in solidarity with us, with the other people on the streets. I'm convinced that that will be the case tomorrow at the universal demonstration tomorrow. Tomorrow is the demonstration will be joined by everybody from all political colors. In view of the pictures that we have seen recently, I wish to warn the Hamburg Senate to refrain from escalation, and we wish to call people, don't be intimidated. Come to the demonstration tomorrow. There will be people from all over Germany coming to Hamburg to voice their criticism of the G20 summit and the criticism of the repressive practices that we have experienced. We will not be split up. We will walk all together. We will protect and fight every single person. We won't allow us to be split up. We will not accept any escalation by the police. Together, in recent days, we have already shown that we can achieve something for this city and for this world. The climax of the demonstration tomorrow will be our universal demonstration tomorrow. I'm confident that there will be so many people tomorrow at the demonstration to express their political attitudes against the G20 summit, against repression. Thank you, Yavuz Fersoglu. Before we go to the question and answer session, I would like to invite Martina Allison, a spokesperson for the Lampedusa community in Hamburg, with a short statement. Hello, everybody. I'm speaking on behalf of the Lampedusa group in Hamburg. I don't think I need to explain anymore who that is. Lampedusa group in Hamburg has had tents at the central station. The group is extremely worried that the tent may be threatened by police in Hamburg who think that it's just a tent, and they're not going to realize that it's from the Lampedusa group. We are trying to protect the Lampedusa group, and I wish to convey their message that they are worried, that they feel threatened, that they're worried that they will be cleared and will never be allowed to erect their tent in the same place again. Thank you very much. Now we have time for questions. Please raise your hand clearly so that we can see you. Please introduce yourself and let us know which broadcaster, newspaper you are working for. A question to Andreas, NDR Radio. How strong is the solidarity really in the groups? When we read people from Statt on Facebook, that it's more about the identity than the issues, then this is a very sharp criticism that comes from left-wing circles themselves. The criticism about why you chose to go that route in the first place. Self-criticism, I haven't heard from you yet. We need to process this and evaluate this and see the criteria. I only flew over details. Our autonomous left is 40 years old, but that's not what it's about. Nothing happened. Nothing came from this autonomous block. Later, of course, people did go, and there were things that were set on fire. We will take the criticism seriously and will respond in writing. But probably after the summit, at the moment, it continues, and we have to look after people who were arrested and injured. I can't say much more than that at this point. I wish to correct something. I'm also a member of Recht auf Stadt. That was only one voice today from Arivati Park, and that was nothing to do with identity. That was about political positioning. That's something completely different. So I want to, on behalf of Recht auf Stadt, unequivocally reject what we absolutely share. We absolutely share the estimation that has been expressed on the podium this morning. I myself was at the demonstration at the back, where the large black bus we had put up next to the river, and which was shot at with water cannon by the police. The police squeezed in, surrounded the demonstration from all sides. The fish market, from the fish market right up to the Breitenstraße. I agree with Christoph Kleiner, absolutely. That was irresponsible. A mass panic could have broken out. We could have had many, many more casualties, and this was only due to the calmness of the demonstrators that we didn't experience anything worse than what we did. I want to expressly state on behalf of Recht auf Stadt that we show solidarity to these demonstrators. We are going together tomorrow. We won't be split up. We will show solidarity to the resistance that has been shown and to show an alternative. And also with 1000 Gestalten, and we will demonstrate. That was a voice from the audience, and Christoph Kleiner wishes to add to that on this question. Will there be fragmentation, discussions between the different movements? I can only say that what I've experienced in what we spoke about, that the solidarity has never been greater than now. Everything that separates us, everything that we could argue about, has no significance in these days, and there's nothing between us at this point. More questions? I must ask rather provocatively, is this a propaganda platform? I'm asking this. I think it's rather one-sided. My question is concrete. When you say that cars were set on fire and we can't prove that that was people out of the black bloc, you have been making 40 years autonomous history in Hamburg. It's all about the arguments of the autonomous, that they who are prepared for extreme action. What is your evaluation? Again, whoever was there, you would have seen that nothing was started by the autonomous bloc. The confrontation was conducted by the police. Of course, when a demonstration is broken up, that people go ahead, and it must have been clear to the police that people would start to vandalize the city. How stupid can you be to attack centrally? But the main reaction was the solidarity of the population. 12,000 became 20,000 people, and I had the feeling that Hamburg is fighting. Hamburg doesn't want this G20 summit, and that was extremely impressive and moving to see this solidarity. More questions? You said that it must have been clear to the police that people would start vandalizing the city. That implies to me, I wasn't there, I can't say who started it. But wasn't it clear to you that sympathizers of this demonstration would have gone ahead and carried out violent acts anyway? Or it would not have happened, and certainly not to this extent. The aim was to move as one column and to arrive as one column. And that is a codex that is completely understood by this movement. Even if we are attacked by the police, or even if there's an inviting window, you're not supposed to smash it. And this is organized in our groups, and that's the way it was. And the reaction after that in the smaller groups, you can say that that's politically wrong, and of course it's bad if these cars that were damaged belong to residents. I believe it is bad, politically bad, and I don't want people's property to be harmed, but I can understand the anger of the people. It has this emotional component, and it has a political component, which of course is not correct. Okay?
In der Mitte für diejenigen, die von draußen zugucken, am Bildschirm sitzen, dies ist ein Fußballstadion.
We're in a football stadium, so this is why it takes a little while for us to get the microphone to the person asking the question. My question, great solidarity has been spoken about here, and if there's no grouping, are there measures, protest measures, that you would distance yourself from? For example, yesterday around the Sternschanze neighborhood, our camera team was attacked, large stones were thrown. So are there political measures that you would distance yourself from? Any question is permissible here.
Vom Podium die Ansage jetzt, könnten Sie bitte Ihre Zwiegespräche zwischen Pressevertretern und sonstigen Anliegen
Personal
einstellen.
conversations, please stop that.
Hier können Fragen gestellt werden.
Any question is permissible here. This is why we are holding this press conference. No interruption, please, from the audience. Please, who are you asking your question to? Andreas Boyd. I thought probably the question was directed at me. Those are things that I would expressly distance myself, things like being on a camera team being attacked, that's perfectly clear. When people from the press who are visible as people from the press and who experience attacks, this is a complete taboo. This is a problem that has been well known for many years. People who seem to associate with us wearing a particular T-shirt, whether that's, it makes it easy to see who's working for the press or not. There are people, of course, for understandable reasons, who don't want to be filmed, because the police, on the basis of the identification, may be able to use it for some kind of criminal proceedings. This is a well-known problem. So this is why we need to agree with the press in advance that they are clearly visible as members of the press. I regret deeply that this has happened to you, and I wish to condemn this absolutely. Further questions?
In der Mitte, das Mikrofon kommt von Ihnen aus gesehen rechts.
Ja, mein Name ist ich bin von der Wochenzeitung aus der Schweiz und ich war gestern auf der Demo in
I was yesterday at the demo at the back, and it was absolutely clear that the escalation came from the police. For anybody who was observing, my question is, have there been attempts or demands to the police that there will be political consequences after these incidents? This is directed at anybody who would like to answer, and anybody who was there and who observed that. It was perfectly clear that the way it was described, there was this request not to mask your faces. People complied with this request, and then the police stormed very aggressively the back of the demonstration despite this. Andreas Boyd, I give you my answer. For us, we see that there's no more dialogue, and we're fed up with this seriously injured people. We broke up the demonstration ourselves because it was not responsible what was happening. And then later, as the new demonstration joined up together, then we re-registered the demonstration, and it is incredible cynicism to maintain that the demonstration had been broken up. And what was actually, this is outrageous, and what was actually a very nice, cheerful demonstration. And this is what the people fought for, not what the police did. Christoph Kleiner from the podium. Of course, after these incidents, there has to be resignations or other consequences. Or let's say we would normally expect that, but my trust is minimal. Let's start from the top. There should be consequences at the level of the mayor of the city of Hamburg, Olaf Scholz, who bears the responsibility that we have this G20 summit at all. Consequences for André Grota, the Senator for Internal Affairs in Hamburg, who has allowed the police to take control of what happens here. Mr. Duda, the president of the police, who is responsible for the approach, and he's well known for illegal actions. And he's illegal for the idea that leave the courts to come later. He has taken sole responsibility. And legislative powers in democracy cannot be transferred. And the police seemed to ignore this. And what happened, I can say, is a crime. Whether this will be pursued, this issue, but in fact, actually, there must be consequences for this. That was Christoph Kleiner. More questions, please. My question specifically to the two lawyers. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the situation of the people who've been seriously injured and about the situation for the people who are in collective cells and who have been arrested in custody. So more than what I've said already, we just don't know. On the people arrested, I've already said something about this. Our colleagues are working 24 hours a day, and it's very difficult for us to work. It would be good if the press would raise this issue, and we wish the press to appear at the collective arrest center and to remind everybody that our clients in prison have a right to a lawyer. On Herr Duda, president of the police. So the camp at Entenwerder was in fact permitted, and while this had been permitted, and the Duda said to himself, this doesn't interest me at all, and went ahead and cleared the camp. This shows that the head of the police had no intention of respecting court rulings, and that must have very serious consequences. And whether that comes from the state prosecutor, and we must continue to put pressure on the judiciary powers, that is what will happen. More questions? It's not a question. I'm part of Alles Allen, and it's very important for me to say that it's not about who started what when and what kind of approach the police taken. For me, what's important is that everybody in this city, that we all stand up and with a euphoric atmosphere, that we protest for a different world. And that's what I would like people to report on, and not on this small-minded confrontation. This is what I've experienced on the street. This attempts to escalate by the police, that all these games are not accepted, and that we will stand up for our own values of solidarity and to confirm what has been said on the podium, our right to live and our right to the city, that we will take back our right. More questions? So we've come to the end of our fourth conference, July 7th, 2017. I remind you that it's possible to come up and request for a one-on-one interview. Tomorrow, the fifth press conference will take place not at 12 like today, but at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, with, among others, representatives of young people against G20, Dr. Bogo Sago, who should have been here today, but unfortunately his flight was cancelled. And otherwise we'll see you tomorrow, and have a good day.